We are recording. Okay, here we go. So this material that I'm going to work with, some of it is stuff that I've been working with for a long time, and then some of it, I won't say is new to me, but maybe it's stuff that I started to look at in kind of a new and different way myself. And so we're not really looking at this from a new way, we're looking at it from the old way. So as you all know, I'm a traditional astrologer, and so I'm really interested in old astrology books, like a lot of this stuff is from the 13th, 12th century, 9th century, 8th century, I go way back. And so this particular time when I was reading one of these 9th century books, I really took into account what was being said about the zodiac signs. And I realized that I had been using them kind of myself, not picking and choosing, and you're going to be able to find a way to pick and choose themselves as well. But really, where I'm going to be coming from today is from, now it can be applied to natal, but really it's looking at the zodiac from what would be primarily a horary standpoint. And so primarily, but think of it this way, think of horary and natal as being blocks of different limbs of astrology. So horary is maybe originally is the foundational limb, and then you have electional astrology, which is choosing a time. Horary is answering questions. Electional is choosing times. Natal is reading charts of nativities or people who are born. Oh, someone needs to, I'm just going to stop the share for 1 second because somebody needs to mute. There we go. And then, all right, well, hold on a second, and I'll do my little thing over again. Okay, so I'm giving the limbs of astrology. So the primary limb of astrology, or the foundational limb of astrology, is actually horary astrology, which is the art of using a chart to answer questions. Okay, to just answer questions like, will I get the job, or does he love me, or things like that. Then on top of that, the next level is called electional, which is the art of choosing a time. So is this a good time for me to get married, or is this a good time for me to blah, blah, blah. On top of that, next level is natal. So a lot of this was based on how much more difficult it is to do. So natal is really not considered one of the easiest forms of astrology, or the most basic form. Natal takes a little bit more finesse and of judgment. And so natal is next, so that's reading nativities of people. And then mundane, coming from mundo, which means earth, is the top level. And so that's being able to read and predict earthly events and things that will happen. So we're looking at the zodiac primarily from a functional. We're not looking at them from a psychological standpoint. So some of you may be disappointed today who might be thinking, oh, I'll get more info on so-and-so's psyche. And in some level, some of this maybe will give you a different insight. It won't give you more of the same kind of psychological insight, but it may give you a different one, and I'm hoping so. So we're starting with the three qualities, right? Or the three qualities or modalities, or quadruplicities they're even called. And that is what we know as cardinal, fixed, and mutable. Those are the three types of signs. So you have the 4 cardinal signs, you have the 4 fixed signs, you have the 4 mutable signs. But what I want to think about is these older terms for them, because I think that they're really much more useful, and they really give us more of an idea of how these zodiac signs act in a very specific manner. So movable means that the sign initiates action and is active, okay? Cardinal, so cardinal, which equals movable rather. So our cardinal signs are what? Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. So those cardinal signs, right? Those cardinal signs are also called movable, and they represent either the initiation of action and kind of continual action itself. It's in a continually active mode. Let's say that about the movable. It's in a movable and active mode. So think about that for those 4 signs. So think, how is water? So one of my favorite ways to talk about this is to think about how Cancer, specifically as water, acts in a movable way? How does the element of water act in a movable way? And that's through the waves. If you ever go to the ocean or any body of water, every single wave is different. There's always some kind of pulsation. There's always there's always a wave coming through. And so to just kind of think about how different each wave is, how often the rhythm of the wave coming through, that's an expression of the movable, what shall we say, of the movable water. You can think of the goat going up the mountain, as the movable earth, so kind of getting his little stepping and making sure that he can get forward. You can think of Libra going from, the codependent Libra going from relationship to relationship. Libras get such a bad rap, sorry. Okay, so that's movable. So that's this idea of movable. And if somebody asked a question, like somebody just asked a question on Reddit, is this marriage over? And it was it movable signs? So if I'd seen movable signs on the ascendant or ruler of the seventh, which represents the marriage, I might have said, oh yeah, it's definitely over, but it was not. It was the next mode we're going to, which is fixed signs. And so unlike movable signs or cardinal signs, fixed signs crystallize and substantiate. So it's this amassing of energy that ends up happening, which means that there can't be a lot of movement. It's not about movement and shift. It's not about shifts and movement and initiating action. It's basically about consolidating that which has been received after the action has been initiated. Think about it. So movable signs initiate the action. The fixed signs then amass what has been received through that which has been initiated. And then the dual signs, so that's when you get to decide what it is you want to do with your money or whatever, right? So sometimes I save my money, sometimes I spend it. Dual signs do both. So let's think about a fixed sign versus a dual sign, right? So a fixed sign is going to, like we say, it's going to crystallize, it's going to mass, it's going to substantiate, it's going to stay still, it's going to gather in, and a dual sign will do a little bit of that, and then it'll do a little bit of initiating, and then maybe it'll come back to gathering in, and then it'll go back to initiating. So with dual signs for mutable, that's one of the other things that I really like, is that finally, a real idea of how these mutable signs really operate. Mutable signs, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces, generally act in a dual manner, right? The Gemini is the sign of the twins. There are two fish. Sagittarius is half human and half animal. The Virgo is half virgin and half whore. So when we get to these mutable signs, people don't understand their Gemini boyfriend or their matter of fact, we'll actually talk about this in a second. I've got a great chart where a woman was talking about her son, and her son, he was fine until there was something he didn't want to do, and then all of a sudden this raging monster showed up, and dual signs everywhere. We'll look at that chart in a second. So I just want to, here's just another way of looking at the qualities. So that's the first thing. Another way of looking at the qualities is movable instead of cardinal, so that you understand when something is in a cardinal sign. So go ahead and look at your charts right now and be looking at, first of all, what are the cardinal signs in you've known it as cardinal, and your fixed signs and your mutable signs, and now think about these cardinal signs as movable instead. Think about your mutable signs as dual. So be looking at them in this way. Then think about, where are they? Are they on the ascendant? Is the ruler of the ascendant in any of those? I mean, they've got to be in one of the three, right? So what's on the ascendant? Is it movable? Is it fixed? Is it dual? If it's a fixed sign on the ascendant, that person might have more problems adjusting to many different shifts and vicissitudes, right? If the ruler of the ascendant, remember we talked about the ascendant and happiness and how you look at the sign on the ascendant and then look at the ruler of that sign. And so what if the ruler of the sign is also in a fixed sign, right? That immediately, that's a way, that's like a level, all of the things we're talking about are layers of looking at a chart. And so that's a layer at which to look at the chart. What's going on with fixed? What's going on with movable? What's going on with mutable? A lot of the people that we see on Reddit who can't figure out what they're going to do, or what's going on with my life, or what, I don't know what's happening, look at mutable signs. Mutable signs all over the place, or double-bodied or dual, right? Because they want to do this, but they also want to do that. Oh, I can't really decide which one I want to do. I really like this, but I don't. But I also really like that. Dual signs, right? So just another way to kind of get an idea. Gemini is not just mutable and changeable, which indeed he is, but dual. There's more than one. You're dealing with more than one, and that's what I told the mother, and she was like, "Yes, there are two of them." Okay, so we're gonna look at that chart in a little bit, but I just wanted, that's where I want to start, is this new idea, or not new, but just another way of looking, or a deeper way of kind of looking at the qualities. So getting an idea. Any questions about that? Feel free. Whenever you have questions, just feel free to push them into the chat and let me know. Okay, so now we're going to get to a part that I really love. This is something that I have been working with for a long time. And I'm going to go ahead and share something different from it. So directions, and I had a great situation with Lily, who's here right now and who's in my class, and where we were talking about this stuff, and she said, "So why is this relevant?" And we're going to talk about why this is relevant, because it really is, and it's really fun. So as you all know, I'm always talking about being able to read in a way that isn't just about reading natal charts, and that astrology is really quite powerful. And okay, so we're just gonna use this for a second for this whole thing about directions for a minute. I'm gonna actually read from my thing for a second, and we'll look at this. So first of all, know that all of the elements represent a different direction. So those of you who have a proliferation of fire signs, look at what I have here. So fire, which is the hot and dry temperament, is equal to the eastern direction. Oh, you can't see that. Well, I guess we're gonna have to go back, sorry. I wanted you to be able to see that because I'm gonna use it in a second, but you really need to see this stuff first. Sorry about that. Okay, elements and directions, we're at number 2. So fire, hot and dry, east. So if you have a fire sign in your chart, point to it, that's an eastern sign. So wow, so signs represent directions, yes they do, and we're gonna see how that can be important and interesting. Okay, air, warm and wet. So these are the qualities, the temperamental qualities. So I've done the element, the temperamental quality, and then the direction it represents. So air is west, right? So our Gemini, Aquarius, and Libra triad, those are west, that's our western triad. Water, cold and wet, is northern, so Capricorn, Cancer, Pisces, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, that's our northern triad, okay? And then Earth, which now we can come to Capricorn, Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn, that's our southern triad, okay? So what I want you to do right now is I want you to look at the sign on your ascendant, on your rising. So I want to look at your rising sign and write for me in the chat what direction it's representing. So go ahead and figure that out. So if it's a fire sign, if it's Aries, okay, we got one coming in here. All right, so we've got an eastern, we've got a northern, southeast, from the north, beautiful, fantastic, great. Okay, so I'm going to show you how this is relevant in a second. If you hear that, I keep banging the microphone. All right, so that's important. Then, okay, so now we come to my picture when we talk about chart directions, and that's why I brought it up, because I wanted you to see that. So we're coming right here. I'm using what we call a zodiac alphabet chart, chart, because we're going to talk about the zodiac alphabet later in this class, right after this for the most part. So Aries is at the first house and blah blah blah, all of that stuff, which I'm definitely against. And so we're gonna talk about why. I'm gonna talk about why we need to separate the. We're gonna do that today. Talk about why we need to separate the signs from the signs from the houses. Okay. Considering that this would be the eastern point of the zodiac, this is the ascendant, the first house, and the ascendant. So that's east. All right? So then across from that, which is the descendant, and think about it, the ascendant represents the emergence of you. So the ascendant is I. So across from that, seventh house, the ascendant is you, is thou. Mute yourself, please. Okay, so the ascendant is them. So that's the seventh house, and the descendant, which is west. So this is the eastern part of the chart. So point to it on your own chart. That's east, go across. Ooh, I didn't need to do that. Oh, really? Well, that's fine. That's west. All right, so now, yes, I can. Coming up here to the midheaven, right? This is 1, this is 12, this is 11, this is 10. Okay, I just went backwards for houses, right? So this would be the 10th house in the midheaven. This is the south. Now, people get kind of freaked out about this and don't, but this is the south, which means that across from that, and this is called the medium celi, or midheaven, right? So this is the ascendant, this is the descendant, this is the medium celi, C-O-E-L-I, and then this is the imum celi, so the MC and the IC. So when you see those, that's what those mean. This is the imum celi, or the what do they call it? Well, I call it the subterranean, but this is the fourth house. So the IC, I just call it the IC. This is the imum celi. All right, and that's north. Okay, which means, now why does it go that way? Because what it's actually doing is it's charting the sun's course from its rising at the east to when it goes to its highest point in the south, and then sets in the west, and then was considered at that time below the earth at midnight until it came back above the horizon. So that's why south is above instead of below. We would often think of it as below. Of course, when we look at a map, Earth, but remember, this is not a geocentric map. This is a map also of the heavens. But that's really why it's that way, in case anybody had a question about that. And so this means that we can split the chart into 4 quarters. All right? So if this is east and that's south, then this is the southeastern quarter. And then this is west, and this is south, this is the southwestern quarter. That would make this the northwestern quarter, so this is the western half. And then this is the northeastern quarter, this is the eastern half. Got it? So you can split the chart in those 2 ways, northern half, eastern half, western half, and then you can break it down. I'm going to do it one more time. This is the east, this is the south, this is the southeast. So 12 to 10. This is the west, this is the south, this is the southwest. So 7 to 9. This is the west, this is the north, right? And this is the southern half, and this is the northern half, right? You can do it both ways. This is the north, this is the west, this is the northwestern half. That's 6 to 4. And then the northeastern half is 3 to 1. All right, so eastern. So now why do I care about that? Because especially if you've ever met a traveler, they want to know where's a good place for them to go. Or sometimes people want to know, would it be a good idea? Have you ever seen on Reddit when somebody says, I really want to go somewhere else and live and work, right? And so we're going to put up a chart. I'm just going to use Lily's chart here for a second because it's so specific to kind of what we're talking about. But so this is what we can do. So if you can remember, let's say this person comes to me and they say, what part of the world do you think I would be most successful? What I would say is, let me see. And I would look at the signs and the quarters. So remember, looking at a real chart, this is the east. So already we look at all these planets in the east. That's a lot. So that would already that would just say something to me. Oh, the east is obviously a place. Now remember, if you've been in here with me, we've been talking about malefic planets, Mars and Saturn. We've been talking about benefic planets, Jupiter and Venus, and sometimes the Sun, and Mercury can go either way, and the Moon can go either way, exactly, right? And so what we would do, so you come to me and you say, here's my natal chart. What's the best part of the world for me to live in? And I say, well, I'm going to look to see where Jupiter is. I'm going to look to see where the part of fortune is. Now, this is all depending on the local determination. This is a term we've used before, and depending on the essential dignities. So whether it's in exaltation or fall, or so all that stuff that we talked about last week. And if some of you are definitely new, and there are videos for that stuff that I'm making available to people for a while. So you're totally welcome to that material as well. But let's just kind of look at what I'm talking about. So remember, let's just say I decide based on where the benefic planets and the part of fortune are. And in Lily's chart, now the part of fortune isn't on this chart, but I know it's here in Cancer. So in Lily's chart, Venus is a benefic, and it's right there on the cusp of the ascendant. And then the Jupiter is a benefic, and it's right there, and it's in Cancer, which is the sign of its exaltation. So I would be like, that person wants to go in that direction. So what direction would I tell them? I would tell them that they'd want to go in a northern direction, right? Because Cancer is part of the northern triplicity or the northern triad, right? And also I would say you want to go east, right? Because all of this stuff is in the first house, which is the ascendant, which is the east. So it's funny because I've been thinking about this with Lily recently because of having seen the chart. But look, even here, Saturn in Capricorn, but he's not quite as good as all this stuff. This has got more kind of juicy stuff in it, in my opinion. Matter of fact, it's got all the juicy stuff, to be honest. So it's northeast is the direction that I would put this person. So I'm going to come back to our sheet for a second. I keep calling it our sheet, our syllabus, and it'll bring. Oh, sorry. I'm going to come back to our syllabus, and it'll bring me back to. I thought I chose you. Yes, I did. Okay, and it'll bring me to the next section, which is places. Right, and there's what I just explained. Ascendant is east, ascendant is west. Imam Shelley, which is the fourth house, is north, and the midheaven. Mute yourself, please. And midheaven, which is is south. So let's see. Maybe hold on 1 second. Where are you? Yeah. There we go. All right. So I just wrote this out today. I was looking through Christian Astrology by William Lilly, and this is his list. This Christian Astrology is from 1647 or something like that, and so this is kind of late in the game. The book that I was reading, it's called The Introduction to Traditional Astrology. It's a Benjamin Dykes translation of a guy by the name of Abu Mashar. That's from the 9th century, but and almost all of the places are in the Middle East. But I thought this one, almost all of the places, as you can see here, are in Europe. So one of the things I would say is then, well, maybe they should go to a Cancer place. So guess what? The Zodiac represents places. And it doesn't just represent places like destinations. It represents places in your home. So for instance, like I think I've given this example before, if let's say you lost your earrings and you went to your astrologer and said, where the hell are my earrings? And he looked at, and Scorpio was where your earrings were, the sign of Scorpio was where your earrings were. He'd say, well, did you look in the bathroom? Because Scorpio rules the sinks and the toilets and the bathrooms. outhouses and things like that. So, or plumbing and stuff like that. So he would have said, well, check your plumbing. Were you underneath the sink recently for some reason? You know, something like that. So here you can see that the sign that was on her ascendant, and where both Jupiter was in Cancer, Venus was in Cancer, the ascendant was Cancer, and you may not have noticed because I didn't bring it to your attention, but the moon is also there. So you've got this planet in its own sign, in its domicile. Remember, we've been learning that term. So you had a planet in its domicile, which is strong in a good house, which makes it a really strong place for them. Then you've got both benefics there. You got Venus and Jupiter there at the same time. So I would have definitely said, take your ass to the northeast. So now she kind of lives in the northeast, but if she were going to go northeast of where she is, I would actually tell her to go to, it might be on the same longitude, but I might have told her to go to the Netherlands, to go to Amsterdam. Right? So that's an example of how something like this can be useful. And you can do it in your own chart. So you can do it in your own chart. Just right now, even if you've got Jupiter in a bad, or Venus in Virgo, or whatever, I just want you to look at, and you can write it in the chat, look at your own chart and tell me what direction, see if you can figure it out. What direction does your Jupiter, let's just use Jupiter, what direction does your Jupiter imply? And I'm going to go back to Lily's chart and do it again as a example, so I know that we all know where we are, right? So we're just choosing Jupiter here, right? And so there's Jupiter. And so remembering that this is the northeast, this is the southeast, this is south, this is east, this is west, this is north, this is the southwest, this is the northwest, right? So just Jupiter implies north because it's in Cancer, and east because it's in the ascendant. All right, let's see what we've got. Very much north, okay? Born in Russia, we live in Canada, but not east. You moved west. Wouldn't we consider Jupiter combust here? We would. Yes, we would. Oh, ooh, people are getting good. That's good. Thank you for noticing. So yes, we wouldn't. So what would happen? We would be amiss to say, yeah, go northeast necessarily based on Jupiter. Right? There'd be an issue around it, but I wasn't taking that into account. I was just being purely generic like the modern astrologers. No, I was just being purely generic in this particular example. And you know what I mean? And how bad is the combustion when the Jupiter? I mean, because remember also, we're going to talk about combustion sometime down the road, because I have ideas about it, and I've definitely seen things show up. But one of my ideas about combustion is that combustion, the sun actually absorbs the qualities of the planet and wears them like a vestment, takes them on for themselves and wears them. Like, hi, I'm the new Jupiter here. You know, oh, you want Jupiter? You're talking to him, right? That's what ends up happening, I think, with combustion, which is why I think you have so many people who are overconfident. You see a lot of overconfidence. And not in this chart necessarily, but you see a lot of overconfidence in combustion charts because the sun is taking over and might be overestimating himself. Okay, so anybody want to anybody be able to figure that out? Is that too difficult? But once again, I just want to keep remembering that the four signs, the four elements rather, all represent directions. Let's see here. Jupiter and Virgo, Venus is, okay, we're just looking at Jupiter. So Jupiter and Virgo already says, because Virgo is a southern sign. So let's go back here. Let's go back. We'll see if this might just be a little too, it might be a little too much. There we go. So remember, if it's an earth sign, it's south. We can think of them as facing that direction. If it's an earth sign, it's facing south. If it's a water sign, it's facing north. So you're just going to look at and so, okay, you've told me where it is by sign, okay, so Jupiter and Virgo. So can you tell me which quarter it's in? So is it in the northeastern, the southeastern? Jupiter and Libra in the 6th, so northwest. Very good, excellent. 6th house, so 6th house would be the northwestern quarter, like Anna Maria. like Ghana. Excellent. And so, and Jupiter is in Libra. Libra is an air sign, and air is west. So that even further points things towards the west, right? East, 11th house, Jupiter in Leo. So east, yes, so east by southeast, that's right. So the southeast quarter with the 11th house, and then Jupiter in Leo. That's exactly right. That's exactly correct. So that's the way, because you know people do wonder, and we do see it. Let's see, Jupiter Cancer the third. That would be in the northwest. Indeed, it would, and it would also represent north, right? So Jupiter representing north itself. Aries, Jupiter is in Aries, or what's in Aries, Annalise? You'll come through. You'll come through it. All right, so good. So we've gotten, so that's our first section, is directions and places, is knowing that the zodiac can do more than just tell me about myself. Northwest doesn't make sense for me, perhaps because Jupiter is in great condition. Maybe not. Are you in the Northwest now? But Aries, wait a second, but if Jupiter is in Aries, Aries is east. So it might not necessarily, so that's what I'm saying. You have to be able to kind of combine so much. Remember Mercury, right? Mercury rules astrology, or Mercury rules the astrology that I do. And so that means that Mercury is all about combining, he's about about mixology and combining. So we're always combining influences to come up with a judgment, right? And there's the Jupiter term, is the judgment. All right, so look what we got going on here. That's the West. All right, you do your thing. All right, so we're going to come next to, and so that was kind of what direction would be most advantageous, and it looked like Northeast looked like the best area for Lily to be, and that Amsterdam or the Netherlands might be a good place for her. Interesting. So just say no to the zodiac alphabet, and this leads me to the other thing that the zodiac does, and you may or may not have some idea of, which is that the zodiac represents different parts of the body, and this is kind of how it got glued on together, in my opinion, or part of how, is because the signs and the houses, represent the parts of the body. So that means that it doesn't work every single time, but that means that if you find, let's say you find Saturn in a particular house, sometimes that could lead to the understanding that, oh, there will be a problem in that part of the body that's represented by the house, right? We've already talked about how if the ruler of the sixth house of illness is in a sign that can represent. So this is kind of how you would use this. So we'll come to all of that looking at the chart for a second, so you get more of this doesn't feel quite so abstract and crazy. So Aries equals the first house, which equals the head. Aries and the first house, rather. Aries does not equal the first house. Aries and the first house equal the head. This means that, let's say Saturn is in the first house. Have you ever noticed how many really depressed people have Saturn in the first house? I see it all the time on Reddit. Saturn is depression, and that hits the head. So many depressed people with Saturn in the first house. Lots of frustrated and unhappy people with Saturn in Aries. Okay, so just think those are two ways in which you can look at the sign and the house being similar. Taurus and the second house represent the throat, Gemini, and so we could do the same thing with Saturn. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that wherever Saturn is by house, you're going to have a problem with that part of the body, but it's something to look at. And certainly, it's something to look at if the ruler of the sixth is in that one of those houses, and certainly what sign is the ruler of the sixth in, and what house. Okay, so Taurus in the second house, the throat. Gemini in the third house, the shoulders, arms, and hands. Cancer in the fourth house represents the chest, breasts, and stomach. Leo and the fifth house, not Leo rules the fifth house. How dare you write that? Terrible. Matter of fact, Leo is especially a sign that has nothing to do with the fifth house. And I know I can hear the gasps from here, but it's the truth. Leo and the fifth house have nothing to do with each other. Zilch, nothing. Virgo and the sixth, except that they both rule the back, the sides, and the heart. Virgo in the sixth house, the digestive system and viscera. Libra in the seventh, the lower back and kidneys. Scorpio and the eighth house, the sex organs, bladder, and anus. And I think this is where Scorpio gets a lot of its sexuality. So the ruler of six is Mercury 29. Wait, we got some people coming in. Hold on, one comment, one question here. Ruler of six is Mercury at 29 degrees, and I have Saturn in the second house. Always had problems communicating verbal expression. Interesting. So someone with tons of water in the first house could psychosomatic. Yes, it could. Yes, it absolutely could. Yes, tons of water could be, or tons of water can also mean that emotions affect you physiologically, or affect one physiologically. So it can either be psychosomatic, or it can be that the mind psychs the body into getting sick, which is psychosomatic. But psychosomatic often is more, you feel more like it's feigned. Whereas with this, a stress can, with this, like cancer rising especially, stress and emotional stress can break the body down. It can stop the person from being able to physically function. Where were we? So we were digestive system and viscera, Virgo the sixth, Libra in the seventh house, lower back and kidneys. Scorpio in the eighth house, the sex organs, also the pelvis for Libra. The Scorpio in the eighth house, the sex organs, bladder, and anus. That's where we stopped because we were talking about where it got its reputation as being the sexual sign, and it's because it rules the sex organs. Sagittarius in the ninth, the hips and thighs. Capricorn in the 10th, the knees. Aquarius in the 11th, the legs to the ankles. And Pisces in the 12th house, the feet. So that's really, I have two, and I do have a chart that I just want to kind of show that gives us an idea of this, of how it comes to separate, or not separate, what was I trying to say, of how it actually comes to show itself in the chart when it's physical issues coming out. Let's see, when it's physical issues kind of coming to the fore. Yes. So this guy, this was a male who wrote in and said that he had constant health problems and problems with his knee, okay, knee surgery. So the first things I want to look at when dealing with health issues, and this is just a Reddit title. I'm having health problems, knee surgery. So and puts his natal chart in. Sag is rising, so Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius. Remember, Sagittarius is his male diurnal expression. Pisces is his feminine nocturnal expression, right? So we look at Jupiter. Jupiter is in Capricorn. Capricorn rules the knees. So already we know, oh, okay. So I think last week we may have talked about that often the sign that the ruler of the first house is in can show you a part of the body that is tender or may have issues. So for instance, I would have thought also maybe the hips and thighs, right? Because Sagittarius rules the hips and thighs, but sure enough, it's Capricorn, and so he's having problems with the knee. The ruler of Sagittarius, the ruler of the Ascendant, representing the body, right? Representing the body and the physical appearance is in Capricorn, so that's already an issue. But then he said he was having health problems, kind of consistent health issues, and so I look at health problems, infirmity, and so the ruler. So I look to the sixth house. There's the sign on the sixth that's Taurus, and there's Venus in Virgo. So Venus is in Virgo, so she's kind of misbehaving because she's not in a sign that she likes. She's in fall, which often could mean that, oh, that's weak. So it can mean, so this is the kind of the thing to not try to pin anything down. We look at Venus in Virgo and Venus is weakened, but also that means Venus is wayward. Venus can act in a wayward manner because she's in her fall, right? So that means that and also look, she's dual. So maybe sometimes things are all right, sometimes things are fucked up. And look here, she's leaving. It's a separating trine, thankfully, but there's a trine between Jupiter and Venus, and Virgo is the detriment of Jupiter. So even though Venus doesn't seem to be particularly strong, should we say, Venus is just mischievous enough to create health problems for the person. Already, the ruler of the ascendant is in the sign of their own fall, and the sign of their own fall is Capricorn, which leads to the knees. And then we also have Venus, the ruler of the sixth house of infirmities, trining. So remember, trines aren't just good, they're easy. So it makes an easy connection. So that means it's easy for this person to get sick, right? It's easy for Venus to work her magic on Jupiter. And Venus is in Virgo, which is the detriment of Jupiter. So she's easy to work her magic to his detriment and to affect him in his weak place, which is the knees. All right, so that's how we can be looking at these zodiac signs even a little bit more differently. Let's see, would it make a difference if one of those planets was in retrograde? Yeah, I mean, yes, as a matter of fact, if that Jupiter were in retrograde, it would be even worse, in my opinion. We talked about this last week, about when a planet is both in the sign of its fall and in retrograde, that in my estimation, from what I've seen, that's one of the worst positions for a planet to be in, and definitely, expect issues and problems with that placement. And if it's the ruler of the ascendant, it can be health problems. Okay, so I don't use in retrograde. So I don't really use. You say Ceres. I don't really use the asteroids. So, but let's see, detriment, Caden house. But is Jupiter retrograde detriment? Because actually, I have a retrograde detriment Jupiter as well. And as I've said before, remember, anything can be made to work on a personal level in the chart. Anything. It's the areas of life that we don't always have control over, where when these planets are in bad condition, so to speak, that then things don't act the way that we want to. Okay, so I'm just going to go through how these planets, how these signs differ from the houses that they are supposed to represent, right? Because what we would be, I see questions like this all the time. So if Venus is in the fifth house, is that the same as her being in Leo? Or what was the other one I saw? If Mercury is in the sixth house, is it the same as him being exalted? No, because we do not equate the first house with Aries, and we do not equate the fifth house with Leo. That's a way to learn things, but it is not how it goes, and I'm going to show you how now. So the Aries would be the equal to the first house. Aries represents the head, as we talked about. It represents the initiation, initiatory energy. It's the house of Mars, right? But it doesn't represent the body. Aries is not a sign that can be used to represent the actual person. And the ascendant, oh good, well, I'm so glad. And so the ascendant, yeah, this is, in my opinion, this is one of the things that will make modern astrology always falter, is that there's so much of this kind of thing of putting onus on the signs of where they don't really matter. That really I'm really all about this. Signs are emanations of planets. The masculine planets have an androgynous, dual androgynous way of mode of operation. Every planet has it. And so it can act as a daylight male, and it can act as a nighttime female, honey. Okay, so, all right. So Aries is not the first house because it does not include the body. Taurus does love to substantiate, but it's the sign of Venus, which means that it really wants things that it enjoys and likes and it gets pleasure from. It's not so interested in things that it doesn't enjoy. But the second house is about movable assets, wealth, and finances. That's not encompassed within Taurus. Same thing with this. This is one of the worst, in my opinion, is Gemini in the third house, and how it's now the house of communication. And that really screws up this whole very rich understanding of the third house as relations, your relatives, your brothers and sisters, your friends who you grew up with who are like relatives, and neighbors, people close to you in your immediate environment. Also, travels of that nature, travels, like road trips and short journeys to familiar places. So you'll see this says Queen, and that goes even further back to the Hellenistic area. We won't talk about that for a second. But so Gemini doesn't, even though, yeah, it's the twins and their brother and sister, it doesn't really inhabit that. It inhabits these various ideas, or only in the most subtle ways, because Mercury is the ruler of travel, right? He's the ruler of Gemini, and Gemini are the siblings. So you can say it on that way, but it doesn't really get into what the third house really is. Fourth house. So now this is one of the most interesting, because, and I had a client that was talking about how they came to understand that they really resonated with traditional astrology more based on this, was that there's all this confusion about which house is the father and which is the mother. So fourth house or 10th house. And so traditionally the fourth house is the house of the father, because it's the house of your family origins, right? And that was usually delineated through the patrilineage, through the father's lineage. And then the mother would be the father's wife. That's the 7th house from the 4th. And so the 10th house would then be the mother. And so she said, when I looked at my chart and I looked at the 4th house and the 10th house, I was like, there is no way that the 4th house is my mother. This 10th house is my mother. But this is what I have found on the more specific level, that if the moon or Venus are in the 4th house, often it's a matriarchy or they've been raised by a woman. So, and especially if it's Venus in her signs or the moon in her sign or in Taurus, then I almost never have missed when I've asked, oh, do you come from some kind of matriarchal background, or were you raised by women, or I've almost never missed. Okay, so 4th house, Cancer, that doesn't really fit. So all of that stuff. Also think about, this is called the subterranean zodiac, or the subterranean house. Subterranean means below the earth, right? Cancer is a water sign. What does that have to do with anything? Nothing. All right, here's my other favorite that doesn't match. Leo and the 5th house. So we're going to talk about this a little later when we look at charts that are fertile, a chart that is infertile. So we've got the 5th house is the house of children, right? Now we think of it as the house of creativity, but it was initially the house of children. Children are creative, offspring, whatever. So I guess there's a creative aspect. It's never really been connected with creativity until the modern era. But, and I think it comes from, this idea of Leo being expressionistic and creative, but I don't really get with that. I'll get to your little comment there in a second. But one of the things that's important is to understand that there are such a thing as signs that are very fertile and represent a lot of children, and there are signs that are completely infertile and represent no children. And I'm having a lot of success with being able to use them and them kind of working. And Leo, believe it or not, is sterile. It's an infertile sign. Lily will come back to that in a second. Lily has asked me about longevity. Let me bookmark that question, because you don't necessarily look to longevity from a house. There's a medieval technique for longevity, for looking at longevity. You kind of can, but you would remember, you never just use. I don't know if I've said this before. One of the things I'm really learning about, especially about medieval astrology, but just about doing good astrology in general, is that you never use just one thing to confirm your judgment. You always use a variety of things to confirm. And that's another thing I think that modern astrology has a tendency to miss, is don't just look at that, but look at that. Oh, and you also look at that, and also look at that. And I'm learning more and more about that, and it's making me feel a lot more secure. So believe it or not, for longevity, we would not be looking at a house, Lily. We would be looking at something called the high leg and the alcoccative. And so you're like, what? Yeah, exactly. So that's why we're not there yet. All right, so Leo that has nothing to do with the fifth house, right? It's a sterile sign. The fifth house is the house of children. No, thank you. Same thing with Virgo. Look at that. Slaves, injuries, sickness, enmities. What does Virgo have to do with that? Nothing. This is the house of bad fortune. This is the house of illnesses, right? Virgo is considered like the house of health and hygiene and that kind of thing, or the sign of health and hygiene. So once again, it doesn't really line up. Same thing. Well, Libra kind of lines up, right, because it's Venus's sign. Venus is the goddess of marriage, but it doesn't line up with contentions, lawsuits, war, buying and selling. All of those things are seventh house too. Look at how it puts living abroad. It doesn't connect to any of that stuff either, right? But marriage and spouse, it kind of can. Scorpio in the eighth house, death, inheritance, lazy, idle. Like, I don't necessarily see Scorpios connected with death at all. Certainly not with inheritance, right? So definitely not lazy generally. I mean, most of the Scorpios I know are driven as hell. All right, so here's the other one, Sagittarius, which is Jupiter's sign. And you would think, it's got the foreign travel aspect, right? But it doesn't have religious and God, right? This is the house of God. Like, I wouldn't look to Sagittarius, like, I know a lot of Sagittarians that aren't any good at astrology or aren't interested in astrology. You know, kingship, that's nothing connected with Sagittarius and kingship. If anything, Sagittarius is one of the wilder signs, right? So, and certainly not divination. Those are all things that have to do with the sun as, and we talked about this last week, about the planetary joys, the houses of the planetary joys, and the sun. As a matter of fact, we have them here. These are the joys. So Mercury is in his joy in the first, Moon in her joy in the third, Venus in hers in the fifth, Mars in the sixth, and so we're talking about the ninth house now, and Sun being in his joy here in the ninth. Then let's see, what you got? House. If a house is ruled by the planet, and the planet brings forward its significations, will we consider the planet's own significations? Yes, both. Okay, yeah, no, thank you for, yes, yes, you would, yes. Hey, exactly, that's an example of the combining I'm talking about. That's a great question. So what she's basically saying, if a planet rules a house, do we both consider it as the planet and its own significations, like Jupiter is wealth, and also if he rules the third house of brothers, he's also going to be your brother? Yes, right? So you're going to need to be able to separate those two things and combine them. So you'll separate and combine. That's where Mercury is held here. 10th house, action, reputation, advancement, children, change. Remember we talked about how we wanted planets that represented many children in the 10th and 11th houses last week, and so that was something we talked about. Change. I also say decisions, actions and decisions. And notice once again, no career specifically in the 10th house here. And I think I'm gonna do something specifically just where we just look at 10th house and charts and whatnot, and just kind of try to get into that. Okay, but so Capricorn, yeah, does like to rise and all of that other stuff, but does Capricorn really have anything to do with our reputation and actions, right? It's not specific to our actions and our reputation. All right, 11th house. Now, this is the house of groups or whatever, and that is really connected to this Aquarius and groups, but no, it's not really for groups. It was never really groups. It was always friends, but it was also, look, it's called the good spirit. It was always also hopes and dreams. So it was about trying to make your future dreams come true, like how you can make your dreams come true. What's your ultimate dream? Like the 11th house is your ultimate dream, and whether or not you have the ability or friends in high places to help you get to that, to help to make that dream a reality. Aquarius has nothing to do with that. And then last but not least, Pisces, and I'm sure they love this one, putting Pisces with the 12th house, because that completely obliterates all the negative aspects and gives it a glamorous kind of Piscean sexiness, whereas really the 12th house is that spirit and it's isolation and suffering and and just not enjoyment, wailing and lamentation, shall we say. So so we can see here that this whole zodiac alphabet thing is kind of a fallacy, and unfortunately, it's something that that is really entrenched in astrological thought now. And so, for those of you who are here who are not necessarily specifically into traditional astrology or don't know what kind of astrology you're into at all, it's something I'd like for you to kind of take in mind, is that even though it can be a very good way to learn certain things, it's not the way to approach delineation of a chart, in my opinion. There we go. Something was trying to come up. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about these other zodiac classifications, and then I'm going to show you an example of a few of them. And that will kind of do the meat of it, and then we'll talk about this and the degrees. We may not go the full 2 hours this time, but I mean, I have a few charts to look at around this. So starting with the signs that have wings, we were talking about this during class with Lily, and I was like, you ever heard the term social butterfly? She's like, oh my God, and do I ever think of every time I think of social butterfly, I think of a Gemini, right? So, and one of the things that's kind of known about me is that I am very fast. I mean, obviously I talk pretty quickly, but I also walk really quickly. I'm very, very quick. And also, I have friends that say that I'm like an air balloon, or that I have a tendency to hover above things and not be fully grounded all the time. I mean, so this winged thing really kind of puts things in perspective. I have planets in Gemini, I have planets in Pisces, so this really puts a lot of things in perspective for me. So those of you who have signs in the winged signs, be thinking about how that might be manifesting, because more than likely it is. And notice Gemini and Virgo are both signs of Mercury, and Mercury is the god who has wings on his shoes, right? He's Hermes, who has the wings on his heels. So it makes sense. Feral. So if something is feral, it's not domesticated. So we can see right under feral is domesticated. It's difficult to be domesticated. And so Leo, the king of the jungle, you know, if anybody's ever been on or wanted to be on a safari, you know that you go to the safari to see the big four, and the Leo is one of the big four. I think it's, what is it, hippopotamus, rhinoceros, lion, and I forget the fourth one. But but Leo, because you have to go kind of deep into the jungle, Leo is also called Sylvan, which means of the forest. And so, you know, so it's deep in the forest. And I was telling Lily when we were talking about this that I went to a great place in India, which is a shrine. The entire place is kind of a shrine to this avatar of Vishnu called Narasimha, who's half man and half lion. It's called Ahobilam. It's in Andhra Pradesh, and it's all deep. All of the temples are deep in the forest and kind of up the mountain and deep in the forest. And that's the kind of terrain that Leo represents too, is rocky, foresty as well. And then the second half of Sagittarius, and we were talking about Mustang, you know, breaking horses, and how difficult it is to train horses, how wild they are. So once again, these classifications have a tendency to be representative of the animals that are there. Now, here's the thing. I have the second half of Sagittarius rising, and there's not a more Spartan person than I am. I've lived all over the world. I've never been married. I've never had my own children. I've raised other people's children. I've raised some other children, but never had my own children. I definitely could be. You could definitely kind of consider me on some level feral. I've even had people who were interested in me romantically say, you know, I get this sense that I would really need to tame you, and I don't know, right? So whatever. I'm too old to be tamed now, thankfully, but you know, back when it seemed like it was a possibility. All right, so domesticated signs: Aries, Taurus, and Capricorn. Excuse me. So I have signs in Aries and in Capricorn, and despite the fact that I've you know, traipsed all over the world and lived in different countries, etc., I'm very much a homebody. So I do find that the domesticated signs do fit as far as personality-wise. And so we're talking about proliferations, and you know, one of the things that we're going to talk about, which I'm kind of preparing, it's down the road, is there were classifications for the soul. There were astrological delineation for the soul, and so we're going to actually look at those techniques. And so I would say if some of these planets that represented the soul, you saw some of these, they would show up more. Certainly, if you see the moon in these signs, if you see the ruler of the ascendant in these signs, you see the ascendant itself in these signs, then you know that it's going to show up in the personality. It's going to show up in the person. Now here we come to fertile and sterile. So the fertile signs are the water signs. Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. They're also called fruitful. They also call them fruitful. The sterile signs are Leo and the two Mercury signs. Now, I have a theory around this and around how it's those three signs. First of all, Leo and the Sun are hot and dry, and we touched on this hot and dry and whatever. That stuff is really more important than you might want to give it weight. And I would really recommend that you go through your chart, go through the zodiac signs in your chart, and understand which ones are hot and dry, which ones are cold and wet, which ones are cold and dry. What does that really mean? What does that imply? Because it really does imply something. Because cold and wet acts different from hot and dry, very, very differently. And it's a way that you can start thinking about these signs without having to memorize all of the psychological ramifications that the sign is supposed to represent. And you can be like, oh, wait a second. You can start using your own intuition around what that means based on its quality. So Leo is hot and dry. The womb, right, we're talking about fertility, right? So we're talking about the ability to bring a child to term. The womb is warm and wet. So something that is really super hot and dry is not conducive to the womb. So that's the first, in my opinion, one of the first reasons that Leo is considered infertile, and especially because it's the sun, it's fixed, right? So what do fixed signs do? They crystallize and substantiate, they amass, right? So it would be amassing. It's like a forest fire. It gets hotter and hotter and hotter, so nothing can live in that environment. And then as far as the Gemini and Virgo signs are concerned, we were talking about this last week with Mercury being puer meaning child, Mercury represents children, the young, the youthful. And so there's an element of immaturity and not growing up with Mercury. So Gemini and Virgo, both being Mercury signs, what I'm noticing in charts where it's kind of like Virgo has always been considered sterile because obviously it's the Virgin, right? So Leo and Virgo have always, but it turns out those are the two I always knew of. But it turns out that it always has been Gemini, Leo, and Virgo, and I just never really paid much attention. But Leo and Virgo made the most sense. But now that I see that it's both Mercury signs, I really understand that. Oh, wait a minute. No, it's really because Mercury is the child and doesn't want to grow up and grow into these responsibilities of parenting. So what I'm seeing sometimes in these charts of where there's a lot of Gemini or Virgo or whatever is that it doesn't come around. It's not that they don't like children or they wouldn't want them. It doesn't happen. They've gone in and out of relationships, or maybe they've been with the same person for ages and they just never had children with that person. It's not necessarily that they're infertile. It's just that their life doesn't lead to raising children. So there can be more than one way to not have children, to not raise children rather, so to speak, and more than one way to raise them, right? Okay, signs of few children: Aries, Libra, Taurus, Sagittarius, Capricorn, and Aquarius. All right, so now we come to the wanton or libidinous signs, which I love. And I have a chart that just showed up this morning that we're going to look at to kind of look at that one. And then I was looking for charts around these three. I've got one chart to show off the mute or voiceless, and then I've got a chart to show off the signs of attractive voice. Well, one of the things I was looking to do was I was looking for a singer who had a really beautiful voice and a singer who was not known for not having a beautiful voice, because the signs of attractive voices are the same signs as the signs that are human. And then we've got these half voice or bleeding signs, and then we've got these mute or voiceless. We've got mute signs. And so I thought, I'll look to see if it shows up. I'm not really seeing it showing up as far as the half voice signs, but definitely we're going to look at some stuff around voices in a second here. But so what I want to start with is I want to start with, do I want to start with fertile and fertile? Let me see who I have here. Maybe I'll start with just give me a minute here. Okay, here's mute. Shit. When you have so much shit open that you like start opening stuff and it's the wrong shit, you know how it is. The way I gotta close this again because I gotta be sure what the pattern panel with that's okay. That okay. Oh, it's up. Good. Yeah, me fine. Perfect. Okay, so this came up on Reddit, and I want to read to you what I wrote. Well, okay, so the question was, what's the best method of emotional healing for an artist with a Capricorn moon? I know it's in detriment, but I don't know how to help myself open up. So what I saw was, yes, indeed, the moon was in detriment, but look, across from it, it was opposing Mercury. Now, Mercury rules the tongue, right? Mercury rules the tongue, and also the moon is our unconscious mind, or the mind that kind of represents our emotions and our feelings and all of that kind of stuff, but Mercury is the mind that puts those things into words. And I looked at the sign it was in, and it was in Cancer, which is a mute sign. So I was like, oh, wait, this person is in touch with their emotions. They just can't put them into words. So this is what I wrote. I don't think opening up more may necessarily be the best method for healing this chart. However, from the Moon-Mercury opposition, I would say there is more of an issue of flow rather than openness. This is partially because Mercury is in Cancer, which is ruled by the Moon. Cancer is one of the 3 mute signs. So in this case, maybe even though the Mercury can recognize what the Moon wants to communicate, it either can't find the words or doesn't have the inclination to put the Moon's needs into words. So what she wrote was, this was extremely informative. I do have a very difficult time with words, especially speaking out loud. I'm very reserved when it comes to talking about my emotions. Reserved, that's a Saturn word, Capricorn. I'm very reserved when it comes to talking about my emotions. There's the Moon, even though I feel like I feel them very strongly. There's the connection between the Moon and the Mercury. So, once again, some of these things seem like, well, does it really matter, you know, or you like I'm saying, even I myself, I would go through these lists and I would think, like, does that really matter? You know, do I really care about that? Like, what I really want is get into the nitty gritty. But this is the nitty gritty because, as you see, I just did a delineation of this person's chart, just using the mute thing, and I was dead on. And so there's something to this. We just haven't figured it all out. Okay, let me look for the other chart. Oh, here it is. Is there anything relating to hypersexuality? Couldn't get better. Okay. This literally just came today. That's a little. Yes. Okay. This literally just came in today. This morning, while I was, kind of I'm always combing through to find cool titles to analyze for my Instagram. Oh, by the way, okay, good. This is the perfect time to plug, and I'll probably plug later. So I am an astrology teacher. I am interested in teaching a class. I have a weekly class that I'm teaching. It's a 16-week course, and the other thing that I'm doing right now is I'm creating an Instagram channel where I look at stuff like this, and I call it one of the things I do is I analyze Reddit titles, which is what we've basically been doing. The actual title was, is there anything relating to hypersexuality in my chart? And that's pretty specific. So of course, what am I thinking? I'm thinking, well, let's go find out if there is. And I want to see a hypersexual chart. So Garthastro is my usual handle on almost everything, and that's my Instagram. So do feel free to just started it, but do feel free to join me on on Instagram. And check out, I just put one up called The Astrology of Tink, where I just analyzed this other guy's chart. With this other guy's chart, he wanted to know if it fit his chart. So let's look at this. Is there anything relating to hypersexuality? So we're looking at this one in relation to, well, first thing I thought, well, where's Venus? You know, I bet Venus is, what is she, in Pisces or Virgo, you know, or Taurus or what? But here we have Venus in the eighth house, in Leo. I mean, there was nothing here. Look, Saturn is in the fourth, kind of close to the fifth house, because I mean, she is ruling the fifth house of sensual pleasures, but you know, she's not really. Well, and here is the 10th house. Okay, so the Venus actions. Okay, sure, maybe, but this wasn't really kind of coming up like sex freak, you know, super freak. It wasn't coming up like that at all. So, but what I did was I looked. I was like, wait a second. What are the libidinous signs again? The libidinous signs are Aries, Taurus, Leo, and Capricorn. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. There is the moon. The moon and Venus are in signs, or they are planets that are called appetitive, right? Appetitive is where the word appetite comes from. They are appetitive. So the moon is our needs and wants, and Venus is what we desire, what we find desirable, right? So they both represent our appetite, our cravings, our needs, our wants. Those are pretty much encompassed within Venus and the moon, which means that, look, we've got needy moon here right on the ascendant in a libidinous sign. And so I was like, whoa, first we've got a libidinous sign on the ascendant. Wasn't I just talking about this? If we see the sign on the ascendant, if we see the moon in the sign, if we see the ruler of the ascendant in the sign. Okay, here's the moon in that sign. So Capricorn on the ascendant, a libidinous sign. Moon in Capricorn, a libidinous sign. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. Saturn is in Taurus, a libidinous sign. Now, I include Libra, to be honest with you. The Venus signs, Venus is sex, so the Venus signs, in my opinion, are slutty. You know, or not slutty, but you know, they're either into sex or beauty or both, right? So, sure enough, it's a Venus sign, and it's a libidinous sign by designation. And then Venus herself, bam, in Leo, one of the four. So it was the four were Aries, Taurus, Leo, and Capricorn, and this sign has important planets that would represent the sexual energy in all of those, including Venus, of course, who is the representative of sex. One of the things I thought was interesting is also the Mars in Sagittarius. Remember, Sagittarius is the hunter's arrow. So this person is doesn't just need it, but is very proactive about getting it, probably too. All right. Let's see. Oh, let's find our infertile chart. Is that it? No, that's heart problems. That was another one. Oh, this will be just a good one just to see for a second, to show another one about how the chart can show the body, show what's going on with the body. This person said, I have heart problems. I have ongoing heart problems. And so I was like, okay, what's going on here? So Aquarius is on the ascendant, ruled by Saturn. Saturn is in Gemini. So nothing that represents, so Aquarius is the legs, Gemini is the arms and shoulders and hands. So nothing necessarily that says, yeah, the heart, that would be. But then we look over here, what sign rules the heart? Leo rules the heart. So here's Leo. What sign rules the sixth house? What sign is on the sixth house? Cancer is on the sixth house. Cancer is ruled by the moon. The moon is in Leo. The moon is in Leo. So the ruler of the sixth house of infirmities is in Leo. And look, it's an exact sextile to the Saturn. So once again, remember, it's not whether or not a sextile or a trine is a good aspect. It's easy. It makes it easy, right? It makes it easy access. It makes access easy. Squares and oppositions make the access more difficult, or create difficulties on the way to what it is. But this is kind of a place where it's not such a good thing to have a sextile or a trine, right? Because it's the ruler of the first sextiling the ruler of the sixth, and not, once again, look at this. Leo is the sign of Saturn's detriment. So it's the heart, and it's also the ruler of the ascendant's detriment. So this is another way in which, once again, you can just be looking kind of at the signs from a different angle, which gets you deeper into the chart and into what's going on with the person. Okay, so last one, I'm going to put that up just so you can have that stuff up while I look for this last chart, which was the infertile. Oh, the infertile one is here. Okay. All right. Oh yeah, and then I was going to do some stuff with voices. Okay. So this person is over 34 and never had children. So this person is part of my study. And that was one of the things I asked for, were people who were over 34 and never been pregnant, never had children. And so what we would be looking for, I always start with the ascendant and the ruler of the ascendant. So Libra rises and Venus is in Scorpio. That's a nice fertile sign. Remember, our fertile signs are the water signs: Scorpio, Cancer, Pisces. Then I would look at the ruler of the fifth house, right? Because I'm wondering about children. What's going on with children in this chart, rather? So Aquarius is on the cusp of the fifth house, meaning Saturn is the ruler. Saturn is in Virgo, a sterile sign. Also, Saturn is in the 12th house, and Saturn is with the head of the dragon. So all of those things would be considered detrimental for Saturn. It would be detrimental for Saturn and thus for the ruler of the house. And also, Saturn is in Virgo, which is sterile. The moon is a co-ruler in everything, right? So if anybody, if it's a horary, if it's a natal chart, whatever, somebody says, oh, I'm wondering about blah, 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 we always look to see if the moon can help to make things happen. And look, the moon is in Gemini, which is a sterile sign. So once again, we've got these sterile signs, we've got these fertile signs, we've got this way of kind of entering the chart, which has nothing to do with psychology, but which has everything to do with reflecting the life as it is. Because remember, the adage is, as above, so below. So what we're really looking for is how the constellatory pattern shows what it is we're looking at on Earth, ourselves. Okay, looking at voices. This is Luciano Pavarotti, and Luciano Pavarotti is one of the greatest tenors of the 20th century. Seriously, as a person who studied as an opera singer, Luciano Pavarotti is one of the greatest singers of the century. Certainly was until maybe the late 80s, early 90s. So the signs of beautiful voice are Gemini, Virgo, Libra, and Aquarius. And if we're looking at a person's voice, we're looking at the second house, right, which rules the throat and thus rules the voice box. So one of the things that I'm noticing is with people, a lot of singers, a lot of people who are they're living as singers, is that Venus is there, and especially the really special singers. Venus is there very close to the second. She's not that close, but look at how she's in the same sign as the second house, as the sign on the second house. The ruler himself is in a mute sign, which I think is interesting. So the actual ruler of the second is in a mute sign, but an attractive voice sign is on the second, and Venus herself is in that sign. Also, we've got the part of fortune, which, Venus is the ruler of the 10th house. And look how Taurus, which rules the throat, is on the 10th. And then over here, the part of fortune, which is very important, and which I will get to, and I will do a class on the part of fortune because it is extremely useful. It is everywhere. We just don't know how to look. Excuse me. So the part of fortune is in Aquarius, which is a sign of beautiful voice. So this is where I was kind of looking to see if it would kind of add up, and it didn't quite add up as much as I would have liked it to. I looked at Billie Holiday. I don't think you maybe have heard of Billie Holiday. She's one of my favorite singers. No, not known for having a beautiful voice at all, and there wasn't really that much difference. But she did have that Venus close to the second house. So that's what I'm saying. I'm seeing a lot of these professional singers seem to have the Venus on the second or Venus in the second. And I myself have Venus in the second and did sing professionally. Okay. So those are our chart examples for that. I want to now come to this thing that I'm seeing all the time, which drives me fucking up the wall crazy. It's people who are afraid of the 18th degree or the 22nd degree or their critical degrees or whatever. And, you know, people get really caught up in these things. People get caught up in these little piecemeal things that are easy to understand, things that are easy to grasp and you can kind of grab onto and, you know, get really, really worried and anxious over. And I don't put a lot of stock in them, to be honest with you. The 18th degree, I read this one thing online about the 18th degree, and it was just so, I can't even think of a word for it. It was just so out there and ridiculous and airy-fairy. Airy-fairy, that's the term my teacher used to use. It was so airy-fairy and out there, like that anybody would be using this article as a source just made no sense to me. But the ancients did have their own degrees that they thought were good or bad or whatever, or there were different ones. And we're going to come to that chart in just a second. But what I want to first clarify is something. So when people are worried about their degrees, they're like, I heard that the 22nd degree is terrible. I have stuff in 22 degrees and blah, blah, blah. And what you end up seeing is that they have something at 22 degrees and something minutes. That's actually the 23rd degree. So there are 30 degrees in every zodiac sign. Every degree has 60 minutes, okay? Then that means that from 1 minute to 1 degree and 0 minutes, that is the first degree, which means that from 1 degree and 1 minute to 2 degrees and 0 minutes is the second degree. So a lot of people are saying, oh, I've got my shit in the 29th degree, or I've got my shit in the 28th degree, but they've actually, or 22nd degree, but they've actually got it in the 30th degree or the 23rd degree. Does that make sense? I'm going to repeat it. Anything that is, any planet that is between the first minute of Aries and 1 degree of Aries, 1 degree and 0 minutes of Aries is in the first degree of Aries. Any planet that is from 23 degrees and 1 minute of Aries and 24 degrees and 0 minute of Aries is in the 24th degree of Aries. All right? So when we're going to look at these, that's how you need to be thinking of it. If you're going to say, oh, it says 13. I have something at 13 degrees. If your thing says 13 on the left and 25 on the right, or 42 on the right, then that's the 14th degree. If it says 12, oh wait, we got a question. I've got somebody asking just right about this right now. For some reason my chat box isn't coming up. I'll come to it in a second when we come to the chart, because I have to actually stop them. There it is. Jim Carrey's chart. His Venus is in the 3rd, around 2nd house, combust by Sun over the planet, as you said to me. I think you are reaching. I'd have to see the chart. Layla. But then that may mean Pluto's in the 17th. It is actually, yes, right? So this is, yeah. So this is my point. This is my point, is that people are saying, oh, I've got stuff in the 22nd degree. No, they don't. They've got it in the 23rd degree. And so now when we look at this chart, I want you to know whether or not we want to be sure that you've got it in the degree it says that you've got it in. So the three designations that we're looking at are pitted degrees, azimine, lame, or deficient degrees. Those are all the same thing, and degrees of increasing fortune. So there are three. Two of them are not so good, and three of them are. And the last one is cool. Okay, hold on 1 second here. Let's close some stuff up. Oh, I think I need to. I'm gonna put this sheet. I keep calling it our sheet. I'm gonna put our sheet back up. Where is our sheet? Sorry, 1 second. Okay, so mull on that while I find this document. This was the, oh, it should be open. Ah, degree categories, that's it. All right, I'm ready. Okie doke. So what they basically had was a designation for each sign. Okay? So if something were, oh, hold on, what's the question? If something were deep or 23rd, yes. If something is at 22, remember if it's at 2201, it's in the 23rd degree. So my Venus Cancer says 2218. That makes it 23. So if it's 22, if it says 22, and then there's a minute after it that's not 00, it's in the 23rd. Okay. So as you can see, if something were in a degree that was called deep or pitted, it was considered unable, it happened to have difficulty. Like, so think if you've fallen into a pit and you can't get out. That was something that they basically designated. So that's how they, and especially if the moon or the ascendant or the ruler of the ascendant, so I'm always going to come back to those three. The ascendant, the ruler of the ascendant, the moon, if those three especially, or let's say you were looking at your money significator and it was in a deep degree, or deep or a pitted degree. Same thing, right? So that's how, so we're going to go through them all in a second. I'm just going to explain what they are now. The lame or deficient, similar, right? If something is lame or azimine or deficient, that means it's sick, right? It's not working in a healthy way. It isn't functioning healthy. It's not at full robustness. It's not in its full robustness. It's not able to fully function, right? Okay, and then we have the ones that increase in fortune. So especially if your part of fortune is in this degree, then, if the ruler of your second house, if the part of fortune is in this degree, if Jupiter is in that degree, then that can be a good thing. Okay, so that's how these were looked at. You see that there is obviously the masculine and feminine degrees, and there's these other designations, light, dark, smoky, and void. We're not going to get into those right now, but we're going to go into that in a second. So the alphabet here on the left corresponds to the zodiac signs. So A would be Aries, B is Taurus, C is Gemini. Okay, and the numbers here, we're not looking at these two columns. We're looking at these three. So the numbers here represent the degree that is pitted. Okay. So we're starting with Aries. The degrees of the pitted degrees of Aries. So so those degrees are in the pit. 6, 11, 16, 23, and 29. There are no lame degrees in Aries. And only the 19th degree of Aries is increasing in fortune. That's the exaltation degree of the sun. So 19 is the degree of increasing fortune. Okay, get it? So now are you understanding why I started with where I started? When I say 6, I mean from 5 degrees and 1 minute to 6 degrees 0 minutes, right? So if you have something that says 6 and the minutes are anything over 0, you're in the 7th degree. You don't have it. All right, same thing with 19. If you've got something at 1927, it's in the 20th degree. Any planet or angle at these degrees would be pitted. That's correct. That's right. At those degrees of Aries, we're talking only about those degrees of Aries. Once again, right? So we're doing it for every sign. We're in Taurus now. 5, 12, 24, and 25 are pitted. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 are azimine, or what's the word they're using? Infirm. Remember, anything can be made to work. And then, look, Taurus has three degrees that are increasing in fortune, which kind of makes sense, right? Moon's exaltation as well. So 3, which is the moon's actual exaltation, 15, and 27. Gemini, pitted degrees, Gemini, 2, 12, 17, 26, 30. No infirm degrees. And 11 is the only increasing fortune degree. Cancer, pitted, 12, 17, 23, 26, and 30. Ill, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And increasing, 1. So Lily, your Venus is increasing. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 15. She said, my first house, like, lame, check, check, check. Okay, very nice. We were, let's see, D, right? Oh, shit, sorry. I've got to move you off for a second. Oh, okay, I can put you all down there. That's good. Okay. All right, Leo, pitted, 6, 13, 15, 22, oh, 22, 23, 28. Deficient, that's the term they were using. I'm calling it ill or infirm. 18, 27, 28. Fortunate or increasing in fortune. 2, 5, 7, and 19. Virgo, pitted, 8, 13, 16, 21, 22. No deficient or ill. And increasing fortune, 3, 14, and 20. I would have thought 28 was in there, because that's Mercury's exaltation degree. Let's see, so Libra, 1, 7, 20, and 30 for pitted. Nothing for ill, and 3, 15, and 21 for increasing fortune. It depends on what houses it rules. She asked, do I want to have an increasing fortune planet, Mars? And it's like, well, does he rule the 2nd house? Does he rule the 10th house? What house does he rule? Because remember, Erica, your name looks new. So one of the things we talked about last week is any planet can act, malefic planets can act in a benefic manner, and benefic planets can act in a malefic manner. So it's all, and any planet that rules the 6th, 8th, and 12th house can be considered kind of functionally malefic. So remember, it's all about mixtures. It's all about mixing and separating and mixing it back up together. So let's see, E was 5, 6, 7. So we're in Libra. Pitted is 1, 7, 20, and 30. No ill, and then 3, 15, and 21 for increasing fortune. Let me come to the question, and then we'll come back. 12th house in the whole chart. Oh, you know what? So I would just go with your ascendant. If you're using a whole chart, I would just use your ascendant and your ascendant and your midheaven. Right? Those are the only cusps that you would be using. I'm kind of into cusps, and I think that they indicate interesting, important things. So if you're someone that hasn't been in my classes, last week we talked about using both. I think you should definitely have a cusp chart that you can reference, and then also look at things from a whole sign standpoint. All right, Scorpio, pitted 1, 7, 20, and 30. Oh, wait, no, sorry. Pitted 9, 10, 22, 23, and 27. Ill 19 and 28. Increasing fortune 7, 18, and 20. Sagittarius, pitted 7, 12, 15, 24, 27, 30. Lots of pitfalls in Sagittarius, huh? Makes sense, huh? Ill 1, 7, 8, 18, and 19. And then increasing fortune 12 and 20. That's very interesting to me. I have, my ascendant is in a pitted degree. My ascendant is in the 27th degree of Sagittarius. What we got going on? Pitted moon, maltreated by 26 Mars, left. All right. And I've got moon at 26 Aries, so. Oh, part of fortune, so someone's got part of fortune and a fortune, increasing fortune degree. Yeah, very nice. Of course, then we need to look at what's going on with the ruler of the part of fortune, right? So wait a second, hold on. I'm going to come to your thing in a second. Where were we? We were at I, right? And so we did 12 and 20 at increasing degrees of Sagittarius. Okay, so Capricorn, pitted 7, 17, 22, 24, and 29. Sick, 26, 27, 28, and 29. Increasing fortune 12, 13, 14, and 20. Let's see what you've got to say here. Pit. Oh, out of the pit eventually. Maybe so. Let's hope so. We're in your corner. So Aquarius, pitted 1, 12, 17, 22, 24, and 29. Ill. I was going to say sick, and then I went ick instead. Ill, sick, ill, sick, ill, 18 and 19. And then increasing fortune 7, 16, 17, and 20. And then last but not least, Pisces. Oh, Saturn's in a fortune degree. Excellent. Pitted 4, 9, 24, 27, and 28. Let's see, no sick degrees. And then 13 and 20. Actually, the ruler of my second is in 13 Pisces, which I've been. But it's Saturn, so maybe my time is coming. Yes, we need to love all of our planets, no matter how much they knock us around.